Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan, and today we are going to be discussing some NHL stars and NHL players who will be traded very soon. Now both TSN and The Athletic have released huge trade bait boards, listing players that they think will be traded at this year's trade deadline. So the questions are, which NHL players make these lists, which NHL players will be traded at this year's deadline, and which NHL stars could be moving teams very soon? All those questions answered and more. Make sure you watch till the end of the video and hit that subscribe button if you're new. Only 30% of the people that are watching these videos are subscribed, so subscribe for more hockey content just like this one and help us on the road to 32K. Now, as I said before, both TSN and The Athletic have released big-time trade bait boards, but we're going to be going mostly through The Athletic's one because it has pretty much the same players as the TSN one, but with more players and more star power to talk about. Now, you can see The Athletic's one right now. We're basically going to be going through the main ones one by one, seeing how likely they are and seeing which players could go where. But we're going to start out at number 1 on The Athletic's trade bait board, and we're going to start out with Nashville Predators big-time defenseman in Mattias Ekholm. Now, it's no surprise whatsoever to see Ekholm at number 1, but this is a guy that has a lot of value with his contract and with the potential play he brings. He has this year and the next at $3.75 million, still at age 30, not too old, still in the realm of greatness. But Ekholm's a guy that's had a down year, yes, but still has potential, in my opinion, to be a top 3 caliber defenseman in the NHL for sure, especially on the defensive side of things. Now, I'm not going to spoil everything about that The Athletic article, but one of the executives that spoke in the article said that the value you get with the contract and the potential playoff runs is definitely worth a solid addition for a lot of assets, and I think that is true. Even though he is not a rental, he doesn't have a lot of term locked up, I think that might be a good thing for a lot of teams right now that don't want to have too much locked up for too much because of this pandemic and because of how the economy is hitting them that way. But I feel like with Ekholm especially, that's a guy that as a top 4 defenseman you can add to a playoff team. If you're a contender and you need a defenseman, Ekholm is the best player out there, no doubt. But next up, going to number 2 on The Athletic's trade bait board, we're going to go to a player that we've talked about a lot on this channel as a potential option for the New York Rangers, but just the chaos in general. Going on to top center for the Buffalo Sabres in Jack Eichel. Now, this article as well is super interesting for Eichel's side because they do say quite a bit that this is more of an off-season trade more likely, and I would agree with that, but there was 2 executives that ended up talking here. One said that they was 100% going to go to the New York Rangers. The other said that the LA Kings are a much more likely fit with the assets they have. But personally, as a guy that does like the Rangers a decent bit, I would love to see Jack Eichel on that team, but I think the Rangers do make the most sense. The only real problem is the division format and the conference format, I guess, because I guess Buffalo doesn't want to face Jack Eichel. But let's be honest here, if they're trading Jack Eichel, they're going full rebuild, so in my opinion, it shouldn't matter either way if they get the assets they truly need. But now we're going to go on to one of the more interesting placements, I would say, on this list. A pretty interesting player here. At number 3, we're going to go to Florida Panthers goaltender in Chris Driedger. Now, Driedger is a fascinating one. So far, age 26 this season, is having a breakout year of sorts with a .926 save percentage and a pretty good sample size so far with the Panthers. Whenever he's playing, the Panthers are always awesome, and he is always awesome, it seems, but he's been having an incredible year, and he comes in at number 3. He has just this year $850,000, so as a backup option, he's really cheap and has been pretty reliable so far this season. Now, personally, if I'm the Panthers, I'm not getting rid of him because this is a luxury I would love to have with Bobrovsky being inconsistent. He has been better lately, but if Bobrovsky's down and you have Driedger putting up a .926 save percentage, that's a pretty good backup option to have. But if one team I think could go after him, I could see the St. Louis Blues potentially being in the race. I mentioned him a little bit in the Bernier sweepstakes a couple days back, but especially with Binnington kind of regressing still a little bit over these past couple of weeks and maybe having less confidence as a start with that melt ever as San Jose, let's say, Driedger is a solid backup option at the very least, and even though Husso's been decent, I think Driedger is a guy that, especially with his cap hit, would likely not cost too much and would be a guy that will be reliable and affordable for the St. Louis Blues too. And next up, we're going to go to number 4 on the trade bait board, and another big-time superstar in the NHL today, a guy that has a lot of potential, a lot of skill, has been great so far this year for the Nashville Predators, but could be their biggest prize if they do trade him at this year's trade deadline. We're going to go to Nashville Predators winger in Filip Forsberg. Now, Filip Forsberg has been a great player so far this year, at least in terms of production, in terms of overall play. He's been having one of the better years of his career so far. The rest of the Nashville Predators have not exactly been the same, and I feel like with Forsberg especially, that's kind of a one-man show for a lot of this season so far for the Nashville Predators. And I think there is three teams that I think could really be an interesting fit for Forsberg. First, I would say is the Calgary Flames. If they can get some cap the other way and are able to make Forsberg work, I think that would be an excellent addition in their wings and some skill that I think is badly needed on that team. Next up, I would have the LA Kings potentially in that race. If they do want to accelerate that rebuild, I think Forsberg is a quality option. He'd be a major talent on the wings, which they have a bunch of quality center prospects, but not a ton of amazing winger prospects. That would change with Forsberg, and that would change on the wings with the skill that he would provide. And again, he would kind of still be in that prime by the time the LA Kings are fully turning around and fully becoming that youthful team. And next up, I would have my favorite team of the Dallas Stars, maybe in that mix. Yes, they would have to trade in the division, which I think would definitely be a hard sell. But at the same time, I think Dallas could be majorly interested, and that skill, that offensive talent is something that they badly need. Now, coming in at number 5 of the trade bait board from the Anaheim Ducks, they have Rickard Rakell. Now, I talked about him a pretty decent bit in the needed to be traded video about a couple days back, so I was a little bit on top of things, I would say. But with Rickard Rakell, he's a super fascinating fit as a guy that could be traded at this year's deadline, I think. Now, here he has this year and the next at $3.7 million. He's 27 years old, still, I guess, in the prime of his career. He's a couple more years removed from those fantastic production seasons with the Anaheim Ducks, but I think this is a player that really needs a contending team to truly get him fueled. He was fantastic on the Anaheim Ducks when they were good, and I think going to a contender is a really great fit. Now, I still think the Calgary Flames are an amazing fit there. The Anaheim Ducks don't want to kind of go in their own conference, or if the Anaheim Ducks do want to go in their conference, I think he's a great fit on that second line perhaps for the Calgary Flames, and an added boost that I think they'll definitely need. Same thing with Filip Forsberg, but Rickard Rakell would likely cost a lot less, but I think any contending team that needs a top 6 winger should definitely go after Rickard Rakell. He's always had the talent, he's always had the skill. It's just putting that together, especially recently, has been a problem. But on a great team and a great offensive team, I think that's a player that could totally thrive in the right situations. But now we're going to go to, yet again, another interesting and confusing pick in this top 28 trade board. We're going to go to number 6 in Arizona Coyotes top winger in Clayton Keller. Now, I am kind of flabbergasted as the reason he's here. One of the executives said that if Arizona were to trade Clayton Keller, which could be a possibility, that they'd want to get some draft picks and recoup some of the draft picks they've lost over these past couple of seasons. But Clayton Keller is at age 22. He's been one of the only successful draft picks they've had over these past few seasons, and giving him up for just more draft picks kind of seems counterintuitive at this point. Now, the main reason why they would want to trade him is because of that cap hit and because of that contract. $7.15 million for the next 6 seasons, and a lot of that is pretty front-loaded and pretty cap-loaded as well. So a lot of that is what the Arizona Coyotes would have to get, not a lot of signing bonuses as well on top of that. And it's a contract the Arizona Coyotes obviously don't want to pay with their situation and financial troubles, let's just say. But I think so many teams would want to be after Clayton Keller. I'll list quite a bit on the graphic, but a team like the Chicago Blackhawks I think could work insanely well. Maybe the St. Louis Blues go after him if they can get rid of some major cap hit there. But I think there's a lot of teams that would like a top 6 winger like Clayton Keller. He can be invisible, he can be inconsistent, but when he is on the top of his game, he's fantastic, and there's really no denying that. But now moving to another young-time player that could be on a new team fairly soon, we're going to go to the Chicago Blackhawks and Dylan Strome. Now another acquaintance of the Arizona Coyotes, let's say, finds himself on the trade block, and it's not really too surprising that he's here. He's been here for a while, ever since really his first season with the Chicago Blackhawks. It's been downhill ever since, but with the right teammates, with the right situation, I think there's potential there to still be a quality middle 6 center. And I think there's a lot of teams out there that would like to take a flyer on that. Now, personally, there's only one real team that I think really comes to mind here, and that's the Vegas Golden Knights. Sure, Stevenson has worked out as a center, and Cody Glass has also worked out as a middle 6 center there so far, but I think they're in real need of a true guy that could fit that role. Who knows if Dylan Strome will actually fit into that role first things first, but I think there is still potential there. With the wingers that Vegas this does have, I think there's a lot of quality options there for Dylan Strome to work with. But going on to number 10 of the trade bait board, we have another player that has been in trade rumors a lot over the past 2 seasons, I would say, but being traded this trade deadline is definitely plausible. We're going to go to the New Jersey Devils and big-time winger in Kyle Palmieri. Now, Kyle Palmieri is still, in my opinion, one of the more underrated players in the NHL, but for the New Jersey Devils, I'm not sure how likely a trade is actually going to happen. I think if the New Jersey Devils were truly wanting to trade Kyle Palmieri, it would have happened last offseason, or the trade deadline. It would have happened the offseason and trade deadline before that as well. There's been a lot of options and a lot of opportunity to trade him in the past, and I'm just not quite sure if this is truly the year. He is a UFA, and he would be a rental. He makes $4.6 million at age 30. He would be an amazing option as a top 6 winger, I still think, especially on the power play. He has a lot of value, but if the New Jersey Devils are going to trade him, this is definitely the year to actually get it done. But now we're going to go to a couple of the Detroit Red Wings right after Montour at 15 and 16. Going on to Jonathan Bernier and Bobby Ryan, 2 interesting assets on the trade market right now. I think first and foremost, when it comes to Jonathan Bernier, he's been really solid for Detroit over these past couple seasons on a bad Detroit team. And I think at least as a backup, maybe fringe starter option, there's a lot of teams that I think would definitely love to have him. I explained before that St. Louis, I think, would be a pretty great fit there if they do make the cap space work. But also maybe like a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins, who, if they don't have full trust in Tristan Jarry, I mean, could make a trade there, let's say, as maybe a backup option, maybe, perhaps, kind of like how Fleury was with Matt Murray in the 2016 and 2017 playoff runs. We'll see. You also have Bobby Ryan on the list, who I think has been very, very solid for Detroit. Obviously, started off fantastic, has cooled off quite a bit since then, but still is a player that does have potential, and I think when it comes to the leadership and the amount of playoffs he's gone through, that's a player that I would like to have on my team as a middle 6, potentially bottom 6 player, but a guy that you can just grind play out and has no BS to his game either. He's definitely a solid player, but I'm not sure how much Detroit will actually get back in a trade like that. You also have Tanner Pearson there, who has been a really interesting yet inconsistent player for the Vancouver Canucks. He's a player that when he first got there was scoring like crazy, has cooled off a little bit in terms of his overall play there, but still, I think has potential as a middle 6 forward that could bring a lot, especially on a third line, let's say, but there is a lot more value there, I would say, in Tanner Pearson than there is in Jake Virtanen, but I think Vancouver Canucks getting rid of either or is, I think, the right move. Now, after those 2 Vancouver Canucks, things start to get even more interesting. At number 19, they have Dustin Brown. Now, personally, I don't know if the LA Kings get rid of Dustin Brown. He's been really good so far this season. If the LA Kings do, in fact, make the playoffs, Dustin Brown, I think, would be a huge part of that, and a player that, especially come playoff time, would have a lot of leadership there and a lot of good play. But if Dustin Brown does get traded, I think it's more of an off-season move. He still has potential, and with the way he is playing, there could still be some value. He has this year and the next at $5.8 million, so a deal that would be hard to get rid of, but still a player that has a lot of potential to bring, especially in the power play, where he's been magnificent this season. Going on to number 20, though, another player that fascinates me on this trade bait board, there's Casey Mittelstadt of the Buffalo Sabres. Now, he has been dropped from taxi squad to NHL roster, the AHL to taxi squad to NHL roster. It's been an absolute carousel of a season for him. But Casey Mittelstadt is definitely looking like one of the bigger busts in NHL recent memory, especially coming from that 2017 draft, which is not looking the greatest in some aspects, and some others like Elias Pettersson and Makar and Heiskanen and Suzuki, it's not looking too bad, but in others like Elias Anderson and Casey Mittelstadt, not looking the greatest. I still think there's potential to unlock there. He's still 22 years old, still fairly young, and if he is given an opportunity, I still think he can be decent, but not looking the greatest, at least in terms of potential to be a top 6 player, which right now, the percentages of that happening are pretty much 0. Now, there's a few other players that I do want to touch on. At number 24, we go to another Buffalo Sabres player in Taylor Hall. He's a guy that signed that 1-year deal there. There was some talks of him maybe going for a contract extension, perhaps, but with the way the Jack Eichel situation has been handled, with the way the Buffalo Sabres have been handled, I'm really not sure if Taylor Hall is going to do that. I'm thinking it's likely just this year to attempt to pad the stats. It hasn't been great this year in terms of goal scoring, and I think that's been hurting him a little bit. But this is a player that I think is definitely out for the count. But as a trade deadline deal, Who knows? Let's just get him off the Buffalo Sabres because even he does not deserve that right now. Now, there's a few other players on this list afterwards, of course, in this top 28, and a few confusing ones, to say the least. Next up at 25, they have Victor Rask of the Minnesota Wild, which I'm really confused by because even though his value is probably the highest it is right now because of how well he's playing with Kaprizov, because of how well he's playing with Zuccarello, I don't know why the Minnesota Wild would want to change that. They finally have Victor Rask playing well. Yes, they have to have him with the god himself, Kirill Kaprizov, but the chemistry is obviously there. He's been good so far this season, so I'm not really sure why the Minnesota Wild would want to change that, especially with how good they've been this month and how good they've been this season, which I predicted, by the way. I thought they were going to be great this year, and so far, they definitely have. Then going at number 26 from the New Jersey Devils, they have Ryan Murray, which another one that I'm not so much confused by, but interested in at least. I'm really not sure if the New Jersey Devils are actually going to make a trade like that. I don't think they would. I think they still want to keep a guy like Ryan Murray, who's still 27 years old, still is decently young, obviously in the prime of his career, but so far has been good for the New Jersey Devils this year and has been as advertised. So I'm not sure if the New Jersey Devils would want to make a change there. We'll see, but I'm not quite convinced of it so far. At number 27, you also have Adam Henrique, a guy that was on waivers, but of course, because that contract was likely not claimed, but I think a trade could end up happening there, especially if Anaheim does retain some salary. He does have a pretty hefty contract this year and 3 more years on top of it at $5.8 million, and that contract would be hard to get rid of, but let's say they get 50% retained, you get about to $2.9 million. That's a pretty solid contract for a guy that just last year was really solid for the Anaheim Ducks. I think there is potential there. I think there is potential for Adam Henrique to get back to his game. And then going on to the last player on this trade bait board, and honestly the most confusing one for sure in this entire trade bait board, at number 28 from the Carolina Hurricanes, they have Jake Bean. Now, I'm really I'm not convinced this is going to happen whatsoever. Jake Bean so far has been one of the most underrated players for the Carolina Hurricanes, no doubt. I always thought Jake Bean should have gotten an opportunity with Carolina. He hasn't really been given that before this season, but he's been given it and he's run away with it, which I think is fantastic for a guy that always had potential as a top 15 pick. But he coming in at number 28, I don't know why the heck Carolina would trade him. He's doing so well so far. He's still super young at age 22, and right now, for the Carolina Hurricanes, they have yet another fantastic defenseman to work with, which is pretty much the status quo in Carolina. But that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Make sure you comment down below your thoughts on this trade bait board. What do you agree and disagree with, and who do you think is the most likely player to be traded in this list, and where do you think the star players could potentially go? Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you share this video with your friends. Get it out there, boys, and hit this card right here to watch all my predictions and picks videos right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video or stream. Goodbye, y'all.